Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump has just done it again. Not only has he just called one of the Democrats' biggest ongoing bluffs, but what's more, he's about to rip apart one of the Democrats' biggest money laundering operations, otherwise known as the Affordable Care Act. Now, as you might have noticed, we just came out of the single longest government shutdown in all of United States history, but what if I were to tell you that one of the primary reasons why Chuck Schumer and the Democrats manufactured that entire shutdown was actually to line the pockets of all of their insurance company mega donors? Well, that's actually exactly what happened. Take a look.
Think about it, especially with the Obamacare thing. So Obamacare is a 100% Democratic policy. It's always been a 100% Democratic policy. What they did is they expanded the subsidies during COVID, and then all those subsidies basically went right into the pockets of insurance companies. And Obamacare insurance policies have doubled in price relative to normal policies. And so the fastest inflation in the economy is these big government subsidies thrown at Obamacare insurance. Think about it, it's kind of like if you give lots of student loans, then the tuition goes up. It's that effect. And so now they're blaming President Trump for Obamacare as well. They should have fixed Obamacare in the first place. And President Trump had a plan in the big, beautiful bill to give people some subsidies, but the Democrats didn't like it because the subsidies weren't going to their campaign contributors, the insurance companies.
And so, folks, that is exactly what's really going on here. But before we talk about President Trump's master plan with all of this, what do you say we go through some background information real quick? You see, every single year, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, receives right around $150 billion worth of funding from the federal government, which, in concept, goes towards covering the healthcare costs of right around 25 million Americans. Now, generally speaking, this federal funding is given to the insurance companies, at which point they provide taxpayer-subsidized healthcare coverage to all of the Americans that need it. The problem, however, is that for years now, the insurance companies and healthcare providers have pretty much been skimming money off of the top in an effort to maximize their revenue, and as a consequence, all of the ACA monthly premiums have gone up, while the quality of the actual ACA healthcare coverage has just continued to go down. And oh yeah, by the way, many of these insurance companies and healthcare providers that have been profiteering off of the ACA's fraud and abuse are actually some of the Democrats' top campaign donors. Go figure. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that is why President Trump is just about to dismantle this entire system. You see, what President Trump is saying right now is, well, if all of this federal funding for the ACA has already been allocated and we can't get rid of it, let's at least give it directly to the American people so that they can have some control over their own healthcare instead of just lining the pockets of the multi-billion-dollar insurance companies. Not exactly a bad idea, to say the least. And by the way, it seems like he's actually going to be able to pull it off. Take a look.
And I've had personal talks with some Democrats, I can't tell you who they are, I just don't want to do that, it's not fair to them, about paying large amounts of dollars back to the people. You know, this was my idea. It came up during that, you know, oftentimes in under times of stress, like the shutdown, you come up with great ideas that you wouldn't have thought of before. The insurance companies are making a fortune. Their stock is up over 1,000% over a short period of time. They are taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're not really putting it back, certainly not like they should. So when I see this, and when I've seen this over the last pretty short period of time, I said, why do we just pay this money directly to the people of our country and let them buy their own health insurance? And you know, I made that statement, and I made it a little bit cavalierly, but it sounded good. And everybody has picked it up, including Democrats. And I am talking to some Democrats right now about doing that. People love it. We're going to take the money, well, if it gets approved, we're going to take the money, we're going to pay it back to the people of our country to go out and buy health insurance. Now, they can put it in a health account. We can do it a lot of different ways. But they buy their own health insurance. They can negotiate price. And it's going to be locked so they can't go out and buy a Cadillac. They can go out and buy health insurance.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. President Trump's plan is to rip the rug right out from underneath all of these corrupt Democrats and shut down their Obamacare slush fund altogether. But now, folks, gutting Obamacare, the ACA, isn't actually the only thing that President Trump is currently working on to ignite the American economy. In fact, take a look at this.
The White House wants to pivot its messaging to the economy and what it can do to reassure Americans things aren't as bleak as many people believe. As Politico points out today, the president and his team want to put a difficult start to November behind them with a blizzard of policy and PR announcements designed to help Americans with the cost of living. So what are those announcements going to be? More deals with pharmaceutical companies to bring down drug prices, efforts to address those higher mortgage rates, try to change the housing market, reducing tariffs, as you guys mentioned, on a number of products, as well as a possible $2,000 rebate check for some taxpayers.
Sure. Is he going to be sending these direct payments to Americans of $2,000 or more?
We will see. We need legislation for that. And again, President Trump is all about solutions, Maria, and yes, everything is on the table.
Americans also struggling to afford health care. Congress knows it. Democrats demanding the government extend subsidies, which lowers Obamacare premiums. The White House thinks it has a better idea. It wants to use money to help boost Americans who rely on health savings accounts. And some lawmakers think there is a real chance for compromise.
And so, folks, like I said, right now, President Trump is pretty much pushing for an all-out economic blitz in order to bring down prices for Americans immediately as we head into holiday season in 2026. But of course, despite the Democrats originally being the ones to destroy the economy during the Biden era, which everyone knows is true, many of them are still trying to blame every single problem on President Trump. So up next, we're going to take a look at that. But first, I do want to say real quick that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. But okay, take a look at this.
For sure, people still are trying to dig out from the big hole that was dug by the previous administration's policies. So if you figure the typical mortgage payment, monthly mortgage payment about doubled. If you look at a typical bag of groceries, the monthly bag of groceries cost about $400 when President Trump was leaving office last time, and about $512 right about when President Trump took office. And since then, it's gone up almost not at all. I think it's like $515, but it hasn't gone back to $400. And so what the Democrats are doing is they're saying that this runaway spending that we gave you guys that created runaway inflation is 100% your fault. Because you haven't fixed it already. And of course, that's very economically illiterate, and I don't think really many people in markets are buying it.
And so, folks, here's really the reality of this entire situation. As many of you remember, during President Trump's first term in the White House, inflation rates were low. They were healthy. Then, the second Joe Biden and the Democrats stepped into the White House, they absolutely skyrocketed, largely in part because they allowed 25 million illegal aliens to come flooding into the country. Then, now that President Trump is back in the White House again, miraculously, inflation rates are healthy again. It's like the Democrats think that all of us Americans don't have functioning eyes and functioning ears and that we can't see what's been going on. Unfortunately for them, that is not the case. Take a look.
We are correcting it. We have strong borders now. We have a great economy. The prices are coming down. The Democrats like to use the word affordability, but their affordability was terrible. The problem with the Democrats, they lie. They do it so well. They talk about affordability, but I'm the one that's getting the prices down. As an example, they had the highest inflation in the history of our country. I have it down now to a normal level, and it's going down further.
And so, folks, you know what? Let's talk about inflation rates for a moment, because yesterday afternoon, we actually got an absolutely bombshell report coming from none other than the Federal Reserve. You see, yesterday afternoon, the Federal Reserve released an absolutely massive report in which they analyzed the economic impact of various trade tariffs over the last 150 years. And can you guess what they found? What they found is that not only do tariffs not increase inflation, they found that, in fact, tariffs actually reduce inflation. So to be very clear here, the Federal Reserve's own senior-ranking economists have now come to the conclusion, after analyzing 150 years' worth of economic data, that trade tariffs, much like President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, for example, are actually good for the economy. Now, as I'm sure all of you remember, when President Trump first levied his Liberation Day tariffs in early April of 2025, just a couple months ago, the left-wing mainstream media and all of their experts were absolutely melting down. But since then, not only has the inflation rate not gone up, it's actually pretty much just remained the same. And so really, what we now know is that pursuing a free trade economic agenda when almost every other country on the face of the planet is looking to take advantage of us, rip us off, and leverage their own trade tariffs against us, well, our free trade agenda doesn't really work out so well. Really, given the current global circumstances, all pursuing a free trade economic policy does is pretty much make our nation totally defenseless to the economically predatory behavior of other countries around the world. And so, folks, now we know for an absolute fact that President Trump's tariffs are actually working. But also, while we're speaking about things that have been lowering inflation, take a look at this.
I believe a significant amount of the inflation that we experienced in recent years is because we threw millions of new people into the country without a sufficient expansion of the housing stock and a sufficient expansion of other forms of fixed capital. Right? The truth is that they need to live somewhere. And if they're living somewhere, then that's a place that other people in America are not living. And so that's a problem. And that was inflationary. And I think that the change in border policy, cutting down net migration to zero, potentially even negative because of the deportations that have been occurring, I think is very disinflationary because it's the exact opposite of what occurred over the last few years.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. As it would turn out, the process of deporting all of these illegal aliens has also actually been helping keep inflation low. But now, folks, here's an excellent question as it relates to all of this. Since President Trump stepped back into the White House, just how many illegal aliens have we really gotten rid of so far? Well, take a look at this.
When you talk about people that have left this country using the CBP Home app, those who voluntarily left, those that we have actively detained and deported, that number is over 2 million people since the Trump administration has come into the White House. That is an incredible, record-shattering number of individuals who were here illegally that are now gone. And when you think about the ripple effects of that, the amount of resources that frees up to focus on the American citizens, it's remarkable the good work that President Trump has been able to do. I would say that by the end of this year, those individuals who have been detained or arrested and deported will be over 600 to 650,000, and then we include many more that are still voluntarily going home on their own as well.
And so, folks, did you catch all of that? In just the last 10 months alone, over 2 million illegal aliens have self-deported, and another 650,000 illegal aliens have been forcibly deported. And now, of course, there's still a lot of work to be done here, but I think we all have to agree that deporting somewhere around 2.7 million illegal aliens per year really is a pretty massive accomplishment. But so, folks, here's really the big point I wanted to make with today's entire broadcast. As you can see, President Trump has pretty much declared an all-out war against the terrible economy that Joe Biden and the Democrats have created. And so far, it sure seems like President Trump is winning that war. And you know what? Thank God for that, because I'll tell you what, that is what it looks like to actually put America first.